This lesson brings us to the unit called linear systems. Linear systems is about looking at lines as they interact with one another on a graph. What we'll be looking at is two lines on a graph at the same time and where they intersect. In order to do this, you're going to be using the skills that you've been using in terms of slope and y-intercept. In this case now, we're going to use this y-intercept and the slope to graph the lines, and then we're going to see where they intersect. To do this, we're also going to be using GeoGebra once again. To get us prepared for that, the Minds On is about just making sure that you remember how to get the y-intercept, and specifically then the rise and the run from the slope of an equation. Right now, what I'd like you to do is go ahead and try these questions here, and then come back and check your work on the video. Remember that the form is y equals mx plus b. The m is the slope, the b is the y-intercept. So the y-intercept here is 3, and that's the point where the line will cross the y-axis. The rise comes from the numerator or the top of the fraction, and the run comes from the denominator or the bottom. Now, when there's a minus, you actually have a choice of whether you make the rise or the run negative. When I do these, I'm going to make the rise negative, since when we were finding rise and run from our graphs, oftentimes it turned out that our rise would end up being the one that was negative anyhow. So looking at the rise here, that is minus 5. And then the run comes from the denominator, that is positive 2. Looking at this equation, the y-intercept here is minus 4. Remember that the sign that's in front of that number goes with it. This example now has a number that isn't a fraction by appearance, but we can think of it as a fraction because 3 can be divided by 1 and still remain the same value. So the rise here is 3, and the run is 1. Looking at this next equation, the y-intercept is 5, the rise is 1, and the run is 2. Now, the reason that I had you review this is that when we graph, we're going to be using the slope-intercept method. And once again, we're going to be going into GeoGebra in order to do this. So looking at the steps, the first thing that you do is put the y-intercept on the y-axis. Then starting at that point, you use the rise and the run from the slope to get to the next point. So you would go over and down, or over and up, or you might go down and over, etc., using the rise and the run to get you to the next point. Once you have 2 points, you will draw a line through them. You will do this again for the other equation that you have, and once you have both of them graphed, you will then go to find where they cross and identify what the point of intersection is. I'm going to work through the first couple with you, and then I'm going to leave you to do the rest. We need to get into GeoGebra, so I'm going to come up here and click the link, and it'll take me to a blank graph. Coming back here, I need the values from these equations. So I will need this 3, and then the rise and the run, and the same with this equation. You can go ahead and write down what your rise and the run are, or you can simply go to your graph and do them. Let's go there now, and we'll put the y-intercept on, which is 3. So to put the y-intercept on, you need a point. So you use this point tool. The y-intercept was 3, so I will put a point at 3. So there's my first point. Now I need the rise and the run in order to get to the next point. If you look here, we have a choice again because this fraction is negative. I'm going to do the rise is -5 and the run is 3. So I need to go over 3, down 5. From here, I'm going over 3, down 5, and putting my point. Now a reminder to watch your scale. In this case, we're using the same graph, so you will be fine. But there could be other circumstances where you have graphs where the scale doesn't go up by ones. So it is important to watch the scale when you do these. Now that I have the 2 points, I can put my line through them. This tool here makes lines. We've used this before. Click the line tool, click on one of these points, then click on the other point, and there's the first line. Now, so I remember which line is which, I'm going to label this. So this is y equals -5/3 x plus 3. Using the text box, y equals, and remember the latex tool, click latex advanced, and I want a fraction here. And if you forget what your line was, you can always go back and check. So y equals -5/3 x plus 3. I'm going to put a minus out in front. And remember, you can preview here, and that's what I'm expecting it to look like. And then I need an x and my plus 3. So there's my equation for that first line. And I'll just put that over by that line, and then I'll go and do the next one. So the next has a y-intercept of -3. So I'll put that on there first. So I go back to my point tool, go to -3 on the y-axis, vertical axis. See how that was a little bit off because I wasn't quite on the grid. So I'm going to grab that and move it, and I'm going to try to get it to snap in place there. There, that looks better. If you're not sure, you can always right click and you see that the point is 0, -3. So I know I'm in the place that I want it to be. Now I need to know what my rise and run are. So I come back here, my rise is 1 and my run is 3. So I need to go over 3 and up 1 to get to the next point. Over 1, 2, 3, and up 1. And it looks like that happens to be the point of intersection. So now I'm going to go to my line tool here, the second icon, grab the line, click on a point for my new line, then click the second point, and there I now have the point of intersection. Now it won't always work out that way, that when I do my rise in 1, I end up right on the point of intersection. This time I was just lucky. Now what I want to do is identify that point of intersection. So I can see that it's 3 and -2. If you want to just confirm that, you can right click again and you'll see here that it's 3, -2. So I'm going to label that as the point of intersection. So I will use the ABC tool here that I had selected before, and I will put in here the point. I'm going to move it so I can see my point there. You can always right click again if you forget, but it's best to be able just to read it off the graph. So my point of intersection, we're going to use just a short form here, is 3 and -2. Click OK and insert that in, and then I'm going to drag that over close to where the point of intersection is. Now I just remembered that I didn't label my other line, so I'm going to come back and I'm going to put another text box in here, and I'll label my other line. So I'm just going to go back and remember what the equation was. It's y equals 1/3 x minus 3. So I'm going to put that in here. LaTeX, Advanced, and I want a fraction. And then I'm going to go back to preview. So y equals, and I'm just going to check back again, 1/3 x minus 3. So I have a 1 in the numerator. And that's x minus 3. So there's my equation for the second line, and I'm going to drag that and label it somewhere close by, maybe over here. There we go. Now, once that's done, I can go ahead, you can do a screenshot if you want, or you can click these 3 lines and pick export image. And it says here you can right click, so I will right click on that image and then copy the image. Go back to my graph, come down into this box here and paste it in. I'm going to use Control V. And there's my graph. So that one's done. And I see here that it is a little bit big, so I'm just going to resize it so it fits still on the regular page. Once I get it down small enough, it'll jump back up. And there you see, now it's up here in this spot. Coming down, I'm going to show you one more, and then you can go ahead and do the rest. There's 7 more to do after this. So here I have a couple where they don't look like fractions, but I can make them fractions, right? They're integers, but I can put a 1 underneath them. So for both this equation and this one, I can use 1 as my run. So I'm going to go back to my graph. If you want, you can click the link and it'll automatically start a new one. Let's go ahead and do that. So I'll click the GeoGebra link that I put in here, and it'll start a new graph. So I still have my other one that I was working with here. And what I want to start with is this equation and my y-intercept, which is 3. So I'll come here, pick the point tool. I want to pick a point. The y-intercept is 3. Come back to see what my slope is. My slope is 4. Remember, that's 4 over 1. So that's a run of 1 and a rise of 4. So I will go over 1 and up 1, 2, 3, 4 and put a point. And now I come to my graphing tool. I want to graph a line. Pick one of these points, doesn't matter which one. Click the second one. There's my graph. Now I'm going to label it at this point. Remember that the slope was 4. So we have y equals 4x plus 3. And we'll put that into our graph. Now I want the second line. So I come back. The y-intercept is minus 2. Pick the point tool. Put a point at minus 2 on the y-axis. Then I want to come back and look at the slope. It's minus 1, so that was minus 1 over 1. I will go over 1 and down 1. So from this point, over 1, down 1, put a point. Make my line. Pick the line tool and get the line. Click one of these points and click the second one. Now in this case, my point didn't automatically fall on the point of intersection. So now what I'm going to do is actually put a point right there where they cross. So you want to go back and pick your point tool and get as close as you can on that grid. And there's the point of intersection. Once again, I can right click on it and see the point of intersection is minus 1, which I can see on the graph. So I'm going to label that, get my text tool. This is the point of intersection, and it's minus 1, minus 1. label that point of intersection. I haven't labeled this line yet, so I'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to go back and check that line. It was y equals minus x minus 2. And put that in there and label that line. Now I'm going to copy this. Click the 3 lines, or you can do a screenshot. Export image. It says to right click. I'm going to right click and copy the image. Now I can go back here and paste in my next solution. And once again, I expect this is probably a little big. I'm just going to resize this a little bit. And that's it. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and try the other questions in here and see how you make out.